Well, obviously, it works less well than in the movies, as you understand. I'm talking about ghosts. Do they exist? What does science say about these strange phenomena? Let's gather our courage, heading to the workshop, which is not haunted. It's weird. I feel like I'm being followed. So, do you believe in ghosts? If so, then you are actually not the only one. According to a survey from the year 2019, 32% of French people claim to actually believe in ghosts or spirits. And this is not a new phenomenon. Stories of ghosts and spirits have been circulating since ancient times. For example, Homer. But not this one. Homer, the Greek author, who, by the way, haunted all the Latin classes, refers to it in the Iliad. Don't get me wrong. Homer is not a ghost at all. When I say he haunted Latin classes, it's a figure of speech. You're muddling things up there. Let's get back to our ghosts. They can take several forms. First, there's the traditional white shroud with two basic holes cut out for the eyes. It's the nicest one. This representation is linked to an old funeral tradition dating back to the Middle Ages. In the past, the deceased's body was carefully wrapped in a white shroud. White traditionally symbolized peace as well as serenity, before the final passage to the other world. When the soul ascended, it quite naturally and logically took the shroud with it, hence this representation. Sometimes, the ghost appears as a floating silhouette, somewhat more or less vaporous. Sometimes, the ghost materializes in the form of a distant echoing voice. Sometimes, it's just a slight breeze, a door slamming, an object falling. You're scaring me now. Easy there. That's what we often read in novels and fantasy tales, or what we see in movies. No one has yet been able to scientifically prove that ghosts or spirits unquestionably exist, and many other theories have been put forward to explain this kind of phenomenon. Oh, that's reassuring. Here, follow me. I'll give you some examples. Look at this setting. A table with sometimes a glass placed in the middle. I'm certain that seems quite familiar to you. It's the basic equipment for communicating with the beyond. In other words, the spirits of people who are no longer of this world. And this is what we call spiritualism. At the beginning, it was actually just a joke, a complete hoax made entirely by the Fox sisters. We are in 1848 in the United States. Maggie and Kate, aged 14 and 11, make their mother and a neighbor believe that they can communicate with a spirit that responds by knocking several times on a table. The adults ask to see, or rather, to hear, and indeed the spirit really knocks. Actually, it's just a typical teenage prank, but with word of mouth, the so-called supernatural phenomenon quickly spreads like wildfire. 6 years later, spiritualism has more than 3 million followers. The two sisters eventually became widely famous throughout the country, communicating with spirits during sessions that attracted hundreds of people. But after a period of 40 years, Maggie then reveals the hoax to the press. In fact, the girl used an apple attached to a string to create the knocking sounds, as well as the sound of her joints cracking. Despite this revelation, the followers refuse to believe them and reject the Fox sisters, who end their lives in poverty. The ghosts will also benefit from significant technical progress, particularly from the invention of photography. The photographer, William Mumler, claimed to have captured the image of ghosts, with this invention thereby attesting to the existence of ghosts. At least that's what he successfully managed to make many people believe, including Mary Todd Lincoln, the widow of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. He took her photograph in the 1870s. Look, in the photograph in the background, one can make out the outlines of a figure that resembles her husband. Except that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated a couple of years earlier, back in 1865. In fact, Mumler was a rather clever individual, employing a trick that would frequently be used in cinema afterwards. It's a technique that involves superimposing two separate images. In this case here, one of President Abraham Lincoln and another of his wife. Photography was in its early stages. Everyone was completely fooled until Mumler was eventually unmasked. Hey, I found an application that actually allows ghosts to appear. Jamy looks pretty good there. Technology can generate phenomena which, in all good faith, can genuinely make one believe in the presence of spirits. Fortunately, there is a science to distinguish the truth from the falsehood. And it has a pretty name, Zetetics. Zetetics. Take that. Ghosts. Well, Zetetics is, in fact, essentially the art of skepticism or demonstrating critical thinking. It's a very useful art at the moment to root out fake news on the internet, for example. And it also applies to examining images where some claim a ghostly presence has actually appeared. Come on, are you ready for a concrete example? The Zetetic method allows us to understand that the light spot appearing next to me is not a ghost or a specter, but is due to a halo phenomenon called lens flare. It's actually an optical aberration, which is associated with the particular positioning of a light source in relation to the camera that's filming me. Basically, Zetetics makes ghosts disappear, right? Yes. And sometimes it's just our own brain playing tricks on us. Take a look at this photo. It's the planet Mars. Some see a face in it. This photo of the surface of Mars was taken on July 25th, 1976. By the Viking 1 probe. And when we talk about Mars, of course, we think of extraterrestrials. So, the brain starts working on its own. It interprets, makes connections between what it observes and what it knows. So, the face jumps out at you. Yet it's simply a rock formation, a kind of mound similar to dozens others found on Mars. But it's quite distinctive shape, and the low-angle light above really gives the impression of seeing a human face. Moreover, since then, NASA has captured a number of other images of the same site at different times, which prove it's definitely not a face. This particular occurrence is referred to as pareidolia. In the same way, depending on the circumstances, you will recognize a silhouette in a blurry shape, a face in a cloud of smoke, and the examples are countless. Impressive. Pareidolias aren't just visual, they can be auditory too. You hear a sound and then try to associate it to something familiar to you. The phenomenon often occurs when one listens to a song in a foreign language. Sometimes my French fellows misunderstand the lyrics of songs in English. Here's a small demonstration using this song by the iconic band Scorpions, Still Loving You. The sound gives the impression to hear, "Tonight my feet are smelling." Well, not at all. The lyrics definitely have another meaning. Funny, right? Another example. There are no French words in this song. It's actually about the Russian national anthem. It's proof that our brains naturally seeks to identify familiar sounds, even when it seems nonsensical. If you have other examples in your own language, feel free to share them to me in the comments. Well, there are moments when we neither see nor hear anything, yet there's a distinct feeling that we get. We really shouldn't underestimate the power that suggestion holds. If I assure you that my workshop is haunted because someone was tragically murdered there, rest assured that's not the case. Well, you're definitely more likely to interpret any little sound or movement as a potential paranormal occurrence. Obviously, we make up stories in our heads. In fact, researchers have experimented with this in a theater. They actually informed half of the visitors that the theater was haunted and the other half that it was under renovation. Here is the result. The first group described noticeably more strange perceptions than the second. These stories are haunting. It's the magic of our imagination. What about tables and glasses moving? Can it be explained? Yes, and according to science, this phenomenon is known as the ideomotor effect. These are in fact involuntary movements that we make completely unconsciously. During spiritism sessions, for example, participants who expect spirits to communicate with them may unknowingly cause a glass of water on a Ouija board to move deliberately towards specific letters. And it happens without their realization, unintentionally. The ideomotor effect is so powerful that scientists believe it is capable of actively moving tables without the people causing the movement being fully aware of it. Ultimately, all these explanations might well combine, and could be sufficient to completely fabricate ghosts from scratch. This is the experiment that a group of Canadian people conducted in the 1970s. They imagined an English aristocrat who would have died 350 years earlier. and would be called Philip. They invented for him a whole life, then a death. In the end, the group of participants used to gather once every week for a séance in which they actively aimed to make contact with the ghost of Philip. After a whole year, it eventually ended up working. By asking questions to Philip, they received various noises in response and saw the table move, as if believing in ghosts could be enough to make them appear. Science and critical thinking have successfully provided an explanation for a great many mysteries, but others surely remain to be clarified. Everyone is therefore free to think that science will one day succeed, or that there is proof that ghosts and spirits actually exist. All these stories end up giving me the chills. Let's move. See you soon, dear ladies and gentlemen. And don't be scared. If you like this video, subscribe and leave a blue thumbs up. It is anyway what actually made many people believe in it. Science and critical thinking provided an explanation for many mysteries.